Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I am your host, D Palm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. Follow the entire MTR network at, you guessed it, the MTR network. You found us, don't lose us. Subscribe in the iTunes store. Subscribe everywhere podcasts are given away for absolutely free. Subscribe on YouTube. I always forget to say that, but the podcast is always concurrently on YouTube. And where else can you do now that you found us, don't lose us? Subscribe. 5-star reviews. Leave them on iTunes. I will read them on the air. I read anything you say. I've said some mean things, very mean things about teams that I love under the auspices of my 5-star review policy. I'm not proud of it, but I did what I had to do. All right. I think that's what I want to do as far as preamble, because it's the most wonderful time of the year. No, not just because of the playoffs and not just because the draft is mercifully behind us, but because it's the season of year, we're reminded that none of us are that good at anything. We're reminded of this because no matter how good you are, whatever you do, be it playing Fortnite, which I'm told is a game that the kids are playing, I'm hip, or whatever you do at your job, you're not the best in the world at it. You know how we know that? Because it's LeBronukah, kids. And every year I celebrate LeBronukah with my old roommate, my old podcast partner, the host of. So are you still on Dude You Podcast? How does this work?
I am still doing Dude You Podcast. We are taking a post events of January 7th. 2018 hiatus still. We talked about golf on a podcast recently. That didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
So hosting that in the works of hosting the Tar Heel blog podcast on sbnation.com.
Nice.
So we are wrapping a couple things up with that. And that would be pretty much the extent of my credentials here. Happy LeBronukah to you, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you very much. If you don't know the voice, you should. That's Chad Floyd. Follow him on Twitter, Chad_Floyd. Like he said, he works with the Tar Heel blog over at SB Nation and my former podcast co-host in our very first podcast, Dude You Podcast. All right, man, we're going to get right into it because as much as I would love to deep dive into all that is LeBronukah, this is the most wonderful time of year. And I'm going to be honest, listeners, we're recording this at 6 p.m. on Sunday. We were originally supposed to record at noon. Chad had a work thing. I respect that. We pushed it all the way back. And someone asked me, well, are you worried that the entire podcast will go out because the Cavs would lose? I said, no, sir.
No.
No, sir. LeBron James in the Game 7 at home? Oh, I'd book your ticket to the second round. Because guess what? And we'll get to this later. I didn't see anything in that Wizards series that makes me afraid for LeBron and them against the Raptors. How about you?
No, I think LeBron just needs to sandbag to Game 7 because it turns out he's pretty good at those. The most unclutched player in NBA history is now won 6 Game 7s in a row?
He's pretty good at this. This is the series where, for the first time in 11 tries, he did not close out a team during a closeout game. People say that's so humanity. I say, no, he's just warming up. It's going to be ugly to see. But let's get into the other news of the week. The NFL draft, my least favorite / best favorite, most favorite time of year is behind us. We had Michael Felder on last week. We talked all the things going into the draft. And the NFL would love for me to come here and give them a free promotion about how entertaining the draft is and the prospects of these future players. And we're going to do that. But first, NFL, we're going to eat your vegetables. Because Reuben Foster, San Francisco 49ers, beat his partner so badly that her eardrums burst. And the Niners said that we're going to sit back and wait for this to play out. And if it's found that he did this, that we'll release him. It's noted that Reuben Foster is fantastically talented at football. It's noted that this was one of the red flags about him coming into the league. And it should be noted that the young lady did not decline to press charges. So, Chad, the NFL over the last few years has set themselves up as somewhere with a higher bar of culpability than the police, which is something I support. But once you've stepped in that breach of being that moral authority, to cases like this, cast all that into a light. Because at the time of recording, to the best of my knowledge, Reuben Foster is still employed. That woman has dropped charges, and the question has to be asked, what next?
I mean, the NFL wants to be like you said, just an arbiter of moral authority and has not really taken a stance on issues that are not only, important to, the lifestyle of NFL players, where you should definitely not be getting away with ever laying a finger on a woman, but they just instead flex their moral muscle on things that don't need to be flexed on. I mean, on the same team, you have Eric Reed still looking for employment because he kneeled during the national anthem, which is another story for another day. But what exactly is the NFL's endgame? I'm kind of as lost as you. I don't really even know where to go with this. But Foster did slip from the top 10 to the 31st pick last year,
right,
based on concerns about things exactly like this. And here we are.
And in the situation where you see the young lady trying to decline to press charges, the state apparently is going to go forward with the case because it's so egregious. It's the thing that you hear, that you know intellectually, that women who withdraw these charges are often afraid for their own lives. They're afraid for the livelihood of their partner. They're afraid for the lifestyle that maybe has been established. They're afraid that the repercussions aren't worth the report. We also know that if you hit a woman and there's no repercussions, you don't necessarily stop. And
yeah, it's hard to learn your lesson when you basically use the same threatening authority that you use to violate a woman to then make her feel marginalized to the point where she drops charges.
100%. And now we're in that murky gray area where the woman has dropped charges. The state is moving forward. Nothing's officially happened in the courts. But the 49ers have stated repeatedly they have a zero tolerance, and publicly, mind you, they have a zero tolerance policy for domestic violence. And John Lynch says, well, if it's found out that he did this, the one young lady had a burst eardrum. That's not something that happens willy-nilly around the house. I've done some housework in my time. I've never burst an eardrum from it. So
no, I've had a tree branch land on my head while ill-advisedly cutting it down with a chainsaw. Did not burst an eardrum.
I'm going to hear that story when we're done recording because that sounds ridiculous. But you're placing yourself in a moral conundrum, and the reason you're in a moral conundrum is because teams like the Niners who come out and try to do the moral high standing of saying this is a zero tolerance policy in our organization, when their feet are placed to the fire, they don't seem to stand up to their convictions. A similar case, well, not even similar, the WWE in the last few years has kind of positioned themselves as championing women in their athletes, women wrestling. They recently did a show in Saudi Arabia where no women are allowed to appear on the card. The women all received massive payoffs because they made a lot of money from going to Saudi Arabia. And the spin from WWE corporate has been, hey, we're going to try to change hearts and minds by being involved there. But when you position yourself as the champion for women and then go and kowtow to a regime that says, no, the women can't be seen in this light, you look a little funny in the light, the same way the Niners look funny now. I'm not suggesting it's an easy answer. I'm not suggesting that if someone does their penance, they have no availability to continue ever living ever. I'm not saying Reuben Foster should be blackballed forever. I'm saying this has to have consequences. And if the law is moving too slowly, the NFL has shown repeatedly willing to move in that gap. And the question now becomes, so the NFL waits. Are they waiting for a video? Because it's always gone over so well when they react after a video, Chad.
Yeah, they nailed it that last time. I forget, what was that guy's name?
It's honestly, it's watching them screw up in real time and not kind of believe they're still doing it. And he shouldn't have a job right now. I don't think that's
controversial. And especially when the worst thing you can do is go out moral grandstanding like the Niners did, publicly saying we have a zero tolerance policy for this shit, and then do nothing. Wait for the facts to sort themselves out. I mean, the facts are pretty evident, and I'm not a guilty until proven innocent person, but sometimes you just gotta call a spade. And I don't really see any action from the NFL or its organizations in that light.
Well, let's talk more about the NFL and lack of action on things that they said they would do. Jerry Richardson, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, was found from an internal investigation and corroborating SI reports earlier this year to have been fostered an environment of racial and sexual abuse within the Panthers front office, including but not limited to referring to a team scout as a nigger and many, many sexually suggestive and untoward things towards the women staffers. Now, they said that Jerry would sell the team, that Jerry would go to the highest bid and get out. But Jerry has openly and loudly proclaimed about who he wants to sell the team to. I'm not going to say some of the rumors and innuendo that were spread about Jerry or somewhat accurately appropriated to his voice. But Google Sean Combs and Panthers. It's interesting. Anyway, a young lady came forward, a victim of his misconduct came forward in an anonymous SI piece this week, scathing, detailing multiple sexual advances from Jerry Richardson, detailing a structural design to quell her complaints and to brush them under the rug and to foster an environment where Miss Richardson was never held accountable for his actions. Chad, you live in the Carolina area. What is the local take on the ground of this? Because this is a guy who put a statue of himself in front of the stadium. This is a guy who, in the 90s, basically proved in court that Hardy's being racist wasn't a bug, it was a feature. He paid fines for this on a corporate level. This is not something that comes out of left field. This is something that's been well sourced by multiple reporting agencies. And now this woman's anonymous claims coming forward, asking questions. Now, what kind of NDA did you sign when you got the settlement? Was it a one-party or two-party? Because when Jerry Richardson is quoted by other owners saying that they think that the claims are specious and they talk to Jerry about it, if Jerry discuss these cases with other owners, he's broken the NDA.
Yeah, for some reason, just locally, it is just now kind of starting to become a situation where Jerry Richardson is not bulletproof in the public eye in Charlotte. And it absolutely baffles my mind. I mean, like the Hardys thing, this shit's been going on for 20 years. And the fact that he brought the NFL to Charlotte has always overshadowed that. I was just moving here when the statue was erected. I laughed at it. Everybody who's been here for multiple years said, no, that's awesome. He deserves it. It's really fun to see the egg on people's faces now that, he's basically one step short of Donald Sterling at this point.
Right.
If not worse.
Well, it's so funny because the parallels are there. Donald Sterling had the housing discrimination cases filed in federal court, and at the same damn time, Hardee's was paying out money to black people for discriminating against them as corporate policy.
It actually probably is a more apt comparison than, you would realize being this close to it. But, the fact of the matter is he just needs to get the hell out of there. And, he should really have the sale of the team taken out of his hands at this point. The NFL is doing themselves no favors letting this guy continue to run this franchise.
It's been wild watching because you see almost like the PR almost snapback from the Panthers is still designed to defend Jerry and kind of dig its heels in the ground. The question has been raised, will he sell this team by the time? Because the team was supposed to be sold by the time the league year started. Still not sold.
I don't see how this team's going to get sold before the season starts. Bruton Smith, he was a big player early on. He's kind of fallen to the background. There have been, a few groups. You mentioned Diddy and Steph Curry's team. They're without saying it another way, they're kind of being blackballed in the situation for reasons that you indicated. So, I work in the real estate business. If somebody wants to buy somebody's house, there are rules in place to make sure that they have every opportunity to buy that house. Jerry Richardson is basically still just pointing at people, say, no, because you're black, no, because whatever reason. And he's made enough enemies to where he's not going to have a friend that can afford to buy this team.
Right.
So, end of the day, man, it's going to be a mess. And I'm, every morning when I go downstairs to get my 6 a.m. coffee, I just grab a copy of the Charlotte Observer just to see what the hell this boondoggles, what the next step is. It's insane.
Well, and more news about NFL owners behaving badly. You may recall in the fall during the uproar about the protests against state-sanctioned violence on African-American men and women. I want to make sure that we're clear on what their protest was for and about. There was a summit of NFL coaches owners and players. It's held in New York, and it opens with Roger Goodell saying, "Let's make sure to keep this confidential." And I say it opens that way because the New York Times required a recording of this meeting. Because and I really hope whoever gave it to him just opened with it just had a timestamp to where it says, let's keep this confidential. And then, like, played it from there because it is so damning. This thing, just reading out just the reporting from it, from the beginning, the players look aggrieved, but they also look focused, and they came in there with a purpose. And the owners sounded like they were trying to do anything they could to placate a segment of fans that they're convinced are their lifeblood while alienating the rest of their fans. The quote from Robert Kraft, who is a longtime supporter of the current travesty at 1600. He says, in this meeting on a confidential tape, recorded information, the problem we have is we have a president who will use this kneeling as fodder to do his mission that I don't feel is in the best interests of America. It's divisive and horrible. First of all, no one has shouted the line of Donald Trump and Meek Mill better than Robert Kraft. I cannot figure it out. He getting all the passes. I figure it's the Columbia Magic wearing off. I just don't know.
Oh, man. See, and this is why I'm not quite as up to date on the NFL stuff, is because everything they do is just so fucking gross, man. And in this situation, you're absolutely right. The players came extending the olive branch, trying to figure out a reasonable solution that works for everybody. This isn't a situation where you should have to have a reasonable solution that works for everybody. You know, common sense and maybe as a nonprofit actually doing good for people other than the 32 owners would be a wonderful thing. But for it all to leak and just to see the ignorance of the ownership groups in this league is just astounding.
It really makes you wonder, like, if you can be this rich and be a decent person, like, ask that question, like, I know they say absolute power corrupts absolutely, but I'm seeing in action. The owner of the Bills, he described a league that was under assault. I'm now quoting the New York Times. He unloaded a dizzying flurry of nautical metaphors to describe their predicament. To me, this is like a glacier moving into the ocean. He said, we're getting hit with the tsunami. He expressed his wish that the league never be a glacier crawling into the ocean. I don't know what any of those things meant, but they're hilarious. Bob McNair said, you fellas need to task your compadres. I don't know where compadres came from, but I'm really glad it's on tape. Fellas, stop that other business. Let's go out and do something that's really productive, produce results, and we'll help you. It's crazy. Eric Reed during the meeting brought up Colin Kaepernick, and the room fell silent. And then everyone turned to being a media problem. There's nothing else that they want here more than the optics of go away. But what they need to figure out is that it's not going to go away. You had Terry Pagula, who owns the Bills, who say this. For years, we watched the National Rifle Association use Charlton Heston as a figurehead. We need a spokesman. When your comp is the NRA in 2018, how out of touch can you be, Chad?
And if you want to just talk about the optics, Eric Reed is still unemployed. Yes. Colin Kaepernick, his teammate with whom he kneeled, is still unemployed. If you want to fix the optics of the situation, you don't discriminate against the players that are trying to take a stand. You embrace them. So, the irony of some of the Bills owners' quotes, his name escapes me because it's the Bills. Who cares?
Exactly.
Then trading up to draft Josh Allen is not lost on me, but we'll get there, I'm assuming.
Oh, we will get to Josh.
God bless. The whole thing, from the Panthers to the Patriots and their 45 supporters. And, you have these are not just like your run-of-the-mill teams. This isn't the Jaguars and the Bucks. And I don't know why I'm singling out the city of Florida. Like, these are prominent franchises in the NFL owned by bigots. And it's disgusting, man.
Yeah.
It is. It's amazing how much light it sheds. I never really thought that racism and bigotry was still so institutionalized, but when you get a bunch of 70-year-old white men in the room, you get a pretty jarring reminder.
I'll tell you what, man, I've talked to a lot of people who are sports fans who've kind of said that too. It's like, once you see it here, you start to notice it everywhere else you're looking. Like, wait a goddamn second. Like, it becomes irrefutable. Like, the things that you thought were hopefully in the past, it becomes so glaring and across all these fields because it's just so naked.
Yeah.
Well, I think
And
we've done the job of making the NFL reminding people listening what the NFL actually is. Let's celebrate a bunch of kids whose lives got changed. I don't celebrate the NFL teams getting what they got. I don't even celebrate, honestly, the Falcons doing what they do. What I really celebrate is that these kids, for at least one night, they got to have their lives absolutely changed. There's nothing in the world than being on the phone with someone. It's a phone call I've had the pleasure to make before. Someone who didn't get drafted but got picked up by an undrafted free agent and say, hey, man, you're going to be a Lion. And hearing that kid cry on the other side of that phone. It's completely fulfilling, completely rewarding. And you and I are Georgia fans. And by God, we're going to talk about Georgia football because Georgia football got 6 players drafted in the NFL, including 3 in the first round. Chad, what happened?
Man, what did happen? Isaiah Wynn was not a prospect this time last year. So, first of all, hats off to Sam Pittman, the Georgia offensive line coach, for whipping that thing into shape because, it turns out the Georgia line was pretty good this year. So, biggest hats off to him. As soon as the Bears took Roquan Smith, I tweeted, let's go ahead and enshrine him in the Hall of Fame. That's a no-brainer.
I have a question for you, Chad. If you're in the NFL and you know what goes on in the league, how the hell do you let them reunite Roquan Smith and Leonard Floyd?
Man, it's going to be a problem. I don't know. I have no idea what else is on the Lions' defense, but if I have Leonard Floyd coming off the edge and Roquan Smith cleaning everything up between the tackles, or I guess between the sidelines more realistically if you watch Roquan Smith play, I am all good with that. And then my boy Mitch Trubisky is going to be slinging the rock on the other side. They got some – hey, they picked up some talent, so, sink or swim for last year's number 2 overall pick. But, yeah, the Bears are kind of sneaky – a squad that I want to watch every Sunday all of a sudden.
I at least want to watch the defense. I'm not going to speak to Mitch Trubisky and his aptitude. I didn't say inept. I just said apt. You already mentioned Isaiah Wynn. He went to New England at 23. New England also picked up Sony Michel at the back end of the first round, creating quite the conundrum for me because as much as I do hate the Patriots, I do love to see a dog do well in the pros. David Andrews has been the center there for, I think, 3 years now. Got himself a ring. Giving Belichick Sony Michel feels like a cheat.
Man, I was just so torn about this one, and I don't want to blow up our spot talking about the other running back taken prior to him. But Sony in that offense, even if it's just with one more year of Tom Brady, is going to be just completely unfair. I mean, Deion Lewis was averaging 5.5, 6 yards a carry for them. He's gone. It's Sony's backfield to do with what he pleases. I'm ready to see some jazz hands for the Patriots. I never thought I would say those words, and it disgusts me. But if the Patriots are going to be good for one more year, I want it to be on the back of Sony Michel. I love that man, and I want him to do great things.
Him in the flats with Tom Brady, I'm like, oh God, all these angles. Like, I'm going to hate watching them play, but I'm going to love watching them play if it makes any sense. Day 2 kicked off with Nick Chubb going to the Browns, the 35 overall pick. I am a well-stated, my Nick Chubb fanhood is bona fide, but I think what Felder said last week is true. I think that pre-injury, he's a better fit in the NFL. I think in 2003, he's a top 3 pick, but it's 2018, and he doesn't do some of the things that an every down back has to do these days. I think he's a good first and second down back, though.
I agree. He's still not quite as explosive as he was, and to be perfectly fair for him, I mean, as gruesome as his injury was, that could be a 2 full season to kind of get back to where he was. But, good for him getting picked right there at the top of the second round. He's going to be a featured player in the Browns offense. They do have some backs that they can rotate with him. Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde are both there. But Chubb's going to get every chance to kind of be the guy. Do the Browns have an offensive line?
They do not. Joe Thomas retired. And so it's real slim pickings up front. That was the thing I've said we'll talk about when we get to the number 1 overall pick. You got to be real careful with these young guys behind this dilapidated line. I'm nervous about the development of Nick Chubb and about that quarterback. Let's talk also about Lorenzo Carter. Felder described it here last week as the Lamborghini. You put a 16-year-old behind the wheel, you can drive that sumbitch off a cliff. But you put an experienced man behind the wheel, you can have the most fun in your life. And the Giants defense I don't know. I guess it's got that mystique still of something that they could develop, but he fits in that scheme that outside rusher, outside linebacker, 3-4 outside backer. I think Lorenzo Carter could really, if he can get developed even more and more refined and become more of an every down player, he can be terrifying. But I think his first year, third downs, you're going to see a lot of Lorenzo Carter off the edge.
Oh, third down, you put him in the NASCAR package and just let him go to work. I had like the weirdest. I don't know if it was kind of like a half asleep, having kind of sat through a lot of the first round or what. But I had the weirdest inkling that the Bears were going to take him and we were going to have Carter, Floyd, and Roquan reunited.
No, God.
And I was really excited about that. Honestly, would have loved to have seen him go somewhere. I mean, if I could put one Georgia player on the Cleveland Browns franchise, whatever you want to call them, I would have loved to have seen Lorenzo go there and play opposite Myles Garrett. They could have bookended something fun there. But, you know, he's one of those hybrid guys that either it's going to click for him or it's not. But, man, if it clicks for him, that is an absolute steal in the third round.
Excuse me. Those are the five I mentioned last week. Javon Wims, taken the 7th by the Bears, excuse me. So we got two dogs ended up in Chicago. What do you think about this? I mean, he was a leading receiver on an offense that I thought wasn't really dependent on the pass. And I think, obviously, like you and I may have talked – I don't know if we talked about this from the G-Day game. We may have seen the last pass from Jake Fromm in a Georgia jersey.
Yeah, I have not watched a second of the G-Day game.
I just heard the reports that this kid coming in is their dad, and that Javon Wims got out while he had to. Do you think he's going to do? Do you think he can get 6th in the league, 7th round draft pick? You're not guaranteed to make a team.
I've got no real thoughts. I don't really see him being a guy who sticks. You know, there were enough kind of key drops, but you got this far. I mean, if you develop a rapport with the quarterback, right? Yeah, right. I mean, they always say, you know, once you get to the 7th round, you'd almost rather be undrafted so you kind of have a chance to find a good depth chart and go there. But at the end of the day, you got drafted, so the team has an investment in you. So, you know, Javon, go out there, play your game, see what happens.
And first and foremost, make some money. Let's go to the first round. That's what I want to talk about today. Thursday night first round. I missed the first round live because I was watching Infinity War. And that
was a good decision.
I wouldn't change a damn thing. But I'll tell you what, before I got into the movie, the surprise pick, number 1 overall, Baker Mayfield. You and I saw Baker Mayfield up close. Oh, you saw him for real close because you went to the Rose Bowl, right?
I did not end up going to the Rose Bowl, no.
I thought you were going to head. Okay. Well, you and I got to see him play against Georgia. We've seen kind of all he can do. He's listed at 6'1", probably closer to 5'11". My question actually is this, because presumably they're going to start him early. And
yeah. But it's a situation where they don't have to. And that's what's going to be so frustrating with all of these guys, is that they're going to be starting by week 6, but they all have guys in place. But Tyrod Taylor is a perfectly adequate quarterback. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're fine. He's more than adequate. But I was going to say that exact same point, but to a larger point to all these first-round draft picks. It used to be you'd pay the quarterbacks, overpay them, and then they would sit for 2 years or a year to watch things happen. Now we're not paying them as much, but now it's an asset that you can maximize early, so you can build on this model of, underpaid quarterbacks so you can spend everywhere else. So they try to rush the players out there. Unfortunately, we've seen them ruin players. Andrew Luck may be ruined.
Andrew Luck's ruined because he's got no talent around him.
But I'm saying, though, if you don't put him out there, if you don't feel the impetus to put him out there that first year behind no line, let him learn, maybe build the line through the draft and free agency, and then to put him out there in year 2. But because you said this guy's going to save us, you throw him out there behind what is admittedly a bad football team. That's how you get the providence of drafting this player, and then you shake him forever. Robert Griffin III will never know what he could have been because of what he had to be.
And I'm just going to name a few random quarterbacks in the league right now. What do Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, and Aaron Rodgers have in common? What does Dante Culpepper have in common with them?
I have no idea.
They all sat for at least a year.
Man.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
It's something that used to make sense because the reasoning was you put so much money into a quarterback, you don't want to ruin him. Now it's like, hell, that quarterback's cheap. Let's go see if we can ruin him. And I don't know. I think that the quarterback being cheaper would make me value it even more.
You would think having, what is it now, 5 years? 5 years of a good option as a quarterback where you can go in and find a dime a dozen guy like, I don't know, Josh McCown, Ryan Fitzpatrick, any one of those dudes that's not going to go out there and aggressively lose you football games. He'll lose you some football games. But find one of those guys, man, and just let them be a tutor for a year. Just pay them an extra $1 million, pay them $5 million a year and say, hey, teach this kid how to play football. Teach him how to pick man versus zone. Teach him what you're looking for pre-snap. And just let that guy go out.
Let's talk about some other quarterbacks in the first round. We talked about Baker Mayfield. I don't know if I love that pick. Sam Darnold went to the Jets. That's a fine pick, I think. He's fine.
Yeah, but he's going to start week 1, and he's going to be ruined.
He's going to be a USC quarterback. A lot of these tall, looks like a quarterbacks who don't necessarily pan out. We'll see, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Josh Allen. I want to talk to you about Josh Allen because you and I are what I call college football guys first. We watch college the most. And normally, it's always funny to watch the guys that we watched in college get evaluated by different people, and they feel differently than we ever felt about them. How many college football people talked about Josh Allen?
There was a little bit of hype around him going into the season, and then I think they played Iowa and Oregon earlier in the season, and he threw 7 picks in those 2 games. Finally got his completion percentage over 50 sometime middle or late October.
So the bottom
the Bills
line is
the Bills drafted a guy with the ultimate upside of Ryan Mallett with the 7th overall pick.
They drafted Christian Hackenberg. Looks like a quarterback. Heard he's a quarterback. That's always jarring for me when I'm in the college football circles and no one mentions a player, but then the NFL's like, oh, we love this guy. I'm like, uh-oh. So then there's a disconnect somewhere because they've covered these kids since they were 16. I would have heard more noise about Josh Allen if he was worth the 7th pick. Other quarterbacks, Josh Rosen, who for my money might be the best quarterback in this draft, fell all the way to 10.
Sir.
Not all the way. Fell all the way to 10 because they think he's too smart. What a great admission that you're dumb. Hey, Jim Mora, you did it with the linebacker a couple years ago. You're doing it now. We see you. You're a snake, and no one should listen to you. I can't believe. Go ahead.
Another situation where the NFL is marginalizing the players that make them the billions of dollars that they make. Josh Rosen is he's a little too smart for his own good. He has interests outside of football is always my favorite way to put it.
And Chad, the big winner of round 1 in my eyes, you bastard, Lamar Jackson, quarterback to the Baltimore Ravens. How'd you pull it off?
Man, I'll tell you what. So I've gone pure just NFL agnostic. I will, go to the bar and the Panthers games will be on Sunday afternoons. If a Ravens game is on, like I will focus on that TV. I'll watch it a little bit harder. Oh man, the Ravens had themselves a draft. I didn't like the Hayden Hurst pick, but I am fully here for the Lamar Jackson era to take over for that elite quarterback, that statue wearing number 5, who, to be fair, does look like a quarterback, as you said, but. Man,
let's talk about some other wrinkles in the draft. Saquon Barkley went number 2 overall. The running back life in 2018 is not a long one. Saquon Barkley, as we mentioned last week, hit some home runs, but most of all, a lot of singles, a lot of pop flies. I don't love that pick. We're going to see how it works out there. Chad, you and I watched Georgia play Notre Dame last year. Notre Dame offensive line had 2 players go in the top 10. Can you explain this?
Well, on Twitter, me and Andrew Hall, our other Doo-Doo podcast colleague, at about the same time had essentially the same tweet saying, well, when you can draft 2 Notre Dame offensive linemen top 10, you essentially have to. I provided the box score from the Georgia-Notre Dame game. He just threw up the fact that they ran for 1.5 yards a carry against Georgia. Yeah, those are my bust potential picks right there. The Notre Dame hype, I still don't – it's 2018. They haven't won anything in 25 years. Like, I didn't know what football was last time they won anything of note. So, I don't know, man. Like, you're an offensive line guy. Do you see anything in Mike McGlinchey, who honestly, I was watching the draft and they zoomed in on the little 49ers cheering section. There was one guy who the camera focused in on. He just stared blankly into space and then just started applauding. But it was clear he had no idea who the fuck Mike McGlinchey was.
It's the best part of the draft, man. People trying to get excited or not excited because a lot of these NFL guys, they don't watch college football all year. They just react to names and things that they're told that Mel Kiper thinks. It's interesting. I love the Minka Fitzpatrick pick to the Dolphins. They're building something really good on defense. Other first-round things that stood out to me. Did you see the video of Jair Alexander reacting to Lamar Jackson getting drafted?
Oh, that was awesome.
It's awesome. That's one of the reasons I really love the draft because these kids, they're teammates, they're friends, they love each other, and watching them come through for that. Calvin Ridley. Tell me how you feel about Calvin Ridley being a Falcon.
Paul, let me go back to Jair Alexander for a second. I worked the ACC Media Days this year, and Louisville's representatives were Jair Alexander and Lamar Jackson. 2 first-round picks. They did a pretty good job picking those.
Man.
Jair Alexander is the freaking man. That guy is hysterical. He actually pitched throughout the first pitch at the Charlotte Knights AAA game today. But you put a microphone in front of that guy, like the reaction to Lamar's getting drafted is exactly who that guy is. I will be cheering for Jair Alexander. He's absolutely hysterical. You said something about Calvin Ridley.
How should I feel? Because I feel like he was just athletically so much better than everyone that he just ate him alive. But I don't know if that translates to the NFL.
How did you feel when Roddy White was at the back of his prime and Julio Jones was getting into it?
If you're insinuating that Julio Jones is in the back of his prime, I'll fight you right here.
I'm not, but he did delete all references to the Falcons on his social media for a second.
Don't you first take me. He's under contract, right? He's under contract, right? We're all good then. Let's keep moving. But no.
Y'all got another first-round pick coming next year.
Do you feel like it's a potential to be kind of like that, though? Like the twin weapons on either side? Is this going to be the complementary piece that frees up Julio again?
I think 100% that's going to be a huge weapon for y'all because, I mean, you said something about Ridley's athleticism. I mean, he's going to be matched up one-on-one a lot, so you're going to kind of be back in a situation where if you bracket Julio, Ridley's going to be a problem, man. He is in a situation to succeed. I thought he was a much, 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 much better receiver than DJ Moore, who the Panthers took as the first receiver off the board. I don't see how what were y'all, 24 or 26? Y'all were 26, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't be unhappy with that pick at 26. I mean, that's a great value if nothing else. And if it doesn't work out, it is for reasons outside of Calvin Ridley's control.
All right, then. So we'll see what happens there.
God, the skill talent on the Falcons, man. I mean, if he does come through, that's just absurd.
Shh, no one talk about it. No one talk about it. Just quietly build.
Definitely not the reverse jinx here.
Definitely not a reverse jinx, you asshole. Let's talk about basketball. We're going to get into the NBA. I do want to mention this. Condoleezza Rice was part of a commission to try to fix college basketball this week. I'm not going to.
College basketball needs a lot of fixing. She addressed absolutely nothing that is actually an issue with college basketball.
Notre Dame's father, Frank Jenkins, this is his quote from the report, and this should tell you how I feel about it. What our commission believes, I think what the NCAA believes, that the interest in college sport is due to the fact that these are students pursuing degrees. Mind you, this is a tournament that brought in $1 billion last year. Don't piss in my head and tell me it's raining, please.
You know what? Maybe in 1947, that was very appealing to people. You know, seeing them do it for the university.
Motherfucker.
I mean, it's, you know, the NFL is the nation's second biggest grift right now, and we could get into corporate taxes on another podcast. I don't think that's what the UD pod's for.
Not the target audience now.
The NCAA is the biggest. Just
it's a scam.
It is 100% a scam. It's beyond that, though. I mean, they have no self-awareness to realize, like, people are kind of onto their bullshit at this point. You
But
know,
it's
you're benefiting from free labor. Condoleezza Rice does not even begin to address, you know, any kind of marketing rights or likenesses or anything like that, which, you know, would solve all of the issues that she actually did half-assedly try to address. So, I mean, it was just a dog and pony show, man, at the end of the day. And it's really disappointing that the status quo that absolutely is completely unfair to people who are, you know, making their universities money hand over fist. It's going to continue.
All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast. The thing I'm really brought you on for, the NBA playoffs. Let's start in the West, where let's go through some of the results early, because I think that the early series did not go the way people thought they did. Because
No,
I'll tell you what, did you pick the Pelicans to sweep the shit out of the Blazers?
no, I honestly did not know the Pelicans were in the playoffs until around game 2.
It sounds like Damian Lillard didn't know it either, but he very quickly found out.
Dude, I wrote them off when Boogie Cousins went out around the All-Star break, but they play a lot better without Boogie Cousins. And I don't want to put that on Boogie. I think that's just the way today's NBA is played.
I think more than anything, it's a pace thing, because they got out and they just ran the Blazers off the court, and in such a way that first of all, we've never seen a 6 Super 3, which is amazing. And it was just, for me, it was just something, it was up-tempo. It was kind of watching the future of NBA basketball happen in real time. And it was a little fun, a little scary, and a lot terrifying for those of us who maybe grew up on a much slower pace of basketball.
Well, even Draymond Green after last night's game said they were blown away by the Pelicans' pace.
Well, that's funny, because Klay Thompson said it was like playing ourselves. Like we're talking about the Warriors Spurs in a second, but they mentioned that playing other teams trying to slow them down, control their pace. Said no, the Pelicans just wanted to run with us, and we didn't know that was coming.
Yeah.
Also, round 1 action, the Thunder Jazz. Jazz won it. I got to ask you, man. At this point, you can't sign the player option for Melo. You can't let Melo sign it, right?
You have to tell him that you're burying his ass on the bench.
Well, he said the quote today was he won't play from the bench.
Well, then call his damn bluff and tell him you're going to play him from the bench and see if $28 million is worth staying on the bench.
The answer for me is yes, unequivocally. By the way, if anyone wants to offer me that kind of money, if anyone wants to offer me that kind of money, the answer is yes.
You know what? I will guard Dwight Howard 1-on-1 for 82 games for $28 million.
I bet you will.
Like 2007 Dwight Howard.
Pre-labrum tear. We'll take that kind of pain. So, hey, the Jazz, they're kind of getting the doors blown off them by the Rockets right now, but, this might be a big thing. This Donovan Mitchell thing might be a thing. And it's so funny because it was watching the flip side of the same problem, because as you and I noticed, when you're a volume shooter, if you win, they love you. If you lose, they hate you. Russell Westbrook, is catching blame for Melo not showing up. Meanwhile, Donovan Mitchell is scoring at a horribly inefficient rate. We're telling you how great it is to watch. Everyone loved Allen Iverson until it stopped winning them games. It's just Donovan Mitchell thing sustainable, or we're looking at another Isaiah Thomas, maybe like a little bit taller.
I think eventually you kind of get to that point. I mean, it's kind of a too much too soon situation for him. If we're talking about the FBI investigating Rick Pitino said Donovan Mitchell was not NBA ready and needed to come back to Louisville. Donovan Mitchell is clearly NBA ready. He might be a little bit too much of the focal point already, and I could see him becoming one of those shooters. But at the end of the day, I mean, those are the guys that pay the bills and keep the lights on for the NBA.
Amen.
I never, even 2 months ago, would have said, yeah, I'm going to watch this game to see what Donovan Mitchell does. But I'm kind of there now. He's a really exciting player. And he's in Utah. And they have some intriguing pieces around him. So it really makes for an interesting cast of characters in Utah, which I don't think I've said ever.
I think what's really intriguing is people have got focused on what Russ wasn't doing, but the presence of Gobert he's such an eraser at the rim that penetrating game is kind of negated. It was kind of the perfect matchup for the Jazz, but Just like the Rockets did with the Timberwolves. I think the Rockets are going to eat them alive.
Oh, absolutely. They just did in game one. But with Russ, I mean, you kind of have the same thing as who I'm assuming will be the name of this pod or referenced in the title, where he does so much for his team that the rest of the team gets complacent. And, you know, he gets to the elbow, kicks it out for a corner three wide open, and Paul George or, you know, whoever you want to name, they're bricking that wide open corner three. It's frustrating as hell to watch because, yeah, Russell's a little bit more ball dominant than the number 23 we will soon be celebrating. But guys around him just get complacent and don't hit shots. That kind of makes it not work.
All right, so
unless you're number 23.
Other end of the West, the Warriors are taking on the Pelicans. Do you think this is a situation where the Pelicans can actually outrun the Warriors, who are without their starting and backup point guards, or are we just trying to grasp for straws and make the Warriors look human?
I think we're trying to talk ourselves into something that is not going to happen. Drew Holiday was 4 for 18, maybe 4 for 14. If Drew Holiday turns it back on to when he was taking Damian Lillard to school, maybe they steal a game or two, but it might be difficult.
Might be a wrap for them, yeah. Let's go to the East. We'll start with the 1 seed that everyone said, oh, this is the year, man. This is the year the Raptors are going to show everyone and turn it around. Hey, man, getting pushed by the Wizards in the first round, not a great showing. I don't believe you need more people. The Wizards were able to pull 2 vintage John Wall games out, but not get anything else done. Do you think it's time to blow up the Wizards, or is this 8 seed the result of the injuries they sustained this year and kind of the tumult as far as the John Wall feuding with everybody?
The fact that the Wizards are – it took them 6 games to put them out of their misery is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I mean, that team was beat to hell. I don't think it's time to blow them up. I think they are awfully reticent to respond to coaching. I think John Wall, you know, maybe alienating his teammates a little bit might not be the best thing, but John Wall is the face of that franchise. I'm a little bit more interested in it from the Raptors angle, though.
Oh, yeah?
Because the Raptors they might take it to 6 or 7, but they're going to get, you know.
They lose. They don't have it.
The Pacers got the shot at LeBron that nobody thought anybody was going to get. And, yeah,
let's talk about the other
Kevin Love was hitting shots. Tristan Thompson was useful today.
Hey, we're going to get there.
I know.
Before we get there, Celtics Bucks, they went to 7. The Bucks kind of arrived, and I think we saw more fight out of the Celtics than anyone really expected, because when they lost Kyrie, I thought this was going to be just kind of I honestly picked the Bucks over the Celtics here in 6, but they showed some gumption here, and you look at the lineups out of Milwaukee in the end of that series, I think that newly free agent coach Bud could do a lot of good in Milwaukee.
Ooh, that would be an awesome fit.
Right?
Oh, yeah. And from the Celtics perspective, I mean, Terry Rozier, who is he again? If you ask Eric Bledsoe.
Eric Bledsoe knows now.
Yeah. The fact that the Celtics were running without Kyrie or Gordon Hayward for 81 and a half games running without him,
right?
They're going to be a problem in the future, and I am just already sick of hearing Bill Simmons crooning about it. I really wanted the Bucks to win that damn series.
Me too, man. Me too. So the other half of the bracket, Sixers Heat. Sixers kind of quote unquote emerged in the playoffs. Yeah, it was great. They did it against an overmatched Heat team. I don't know if this Ben Simmons has to hit a jumper at some point, right?
That would really help.
Because
I mean, you've got JJ Redick to offset that, but it would really help if Ben Simmons could make somebody respect his jump shot.
Because at a certain point, like people, I've heard, oh, Cavs, Sixers, y'all don't want to see it. I'm like, so if LeBron picks up Ben Simmons, what happens? Is it over?
You have 18 fouls to give on Joel Embiid between Love and yeah, you're good. You're golden.
I'm just running bodies at Joel Embiid and saying, hey, LeBron, make sure Ben Simmons doesn't score 1,000 points.
Yeah, pretty much. That seems like a pretty healthy game plan. The Sixers have other than that, complimentary pieces, it's amazing that they just threw away a number one pick on Markelle Fultz, speaking of guys who cannot hit jump shots at all.
Nerlens Noel wasn't even there anymore.
Nerlens Noel, is he even in Dallas anymore? He turned down like an $18 million a year extension, right. Went to the qualifying offer, and I'm pretty sure he finished the season not on the Dallas Mavericks roster.
You might be right there. Let's talk about the reason.
Jaleel Okafor is not there, so
the reason we're all here, the reason for the season, LeBron Raymone James Sr. My God, I want to remind everyone that we are in year 15, and we're seeing the most efficient, most deliberate, probably like second worst supporting cast ever version of LeBron James. And today, when I recorded this podcast, I named it beforehand, but I scheduled it for after the game. And I said, I think LeBron can do this. I think that he can pull it off. I know he can. He's never let me down before. He's LeBron James. And what's he do? What does he do? He comes and drags this bag of bums to the NBA, to the next round. 45 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Chad, you and I have been talking all series how watching these guys miss open shots that LeBron gives them is going to give us an ulcer. But did this 7th game experience kind of grow up some of these young kids?
I hope so. I was going to text you during the start of the fourth quarter, had it on at the open house I was running today because I'm a really bad real estate agent sometimes. They extended their lead from 2 to 8 while LeBron was on the bench. I was just going to text you overrated, but it was even too absurd for even irony. So, my God, this man, what did you say, 45 points?
45,
9 and 7.
He also passed Scottie Pippen on the all-time steals playoff steals list.
He's the only person in any sport that I'm convinced is worth at least half of a season win differential per year. Said another way, LeBron James is worth 40 wins over replacement from your average, whatever you want to call him. We saw that when he left Cleveland and they immediately became a 15-win team. He came back to Cleveland and they immediately became a 58-win team. If you do not appreciate this man for what he is, and you don't have to compare him to Jordan. LeBron is better than Jordan at a lot of things. Jordan is better than LeBron at some things. If you don't appreciate this guy as a guy who is absolutely clutch, he's won 6 straight game 7s, and is the best ever at dragging a pile of shitty carcasses, kicking and screaming through the spring in the NBA playoffs, then you have no joy in your life, and I wish nothing but bad things for you. It was beautiful.
The game-winning 3 on, what was it, Thursday night?
After the block?
Oh, my God. And people litigating, it should have been a goaltend. Well, it wasn't a goaltend. It was a block. And guess what he did? He put a 3 in your eye. On the exact same end down he hit against 2009 against the Magic.
And today, when they started to kind of pull away and LeBron scored 13 straight points for the Cavs, I think, in the third quarter.
Yeah.
You started thinking 0-7 against the Pistons, where he put up 25 straight in the fourth quarter in overtime, turned that game around against the defending champion at the time, Pistons, or the recent champion Pistons, but still the king of the East Pistons. You kind of got that feeling, and it was, it's the Pacers, and it's Game 7 of the first round, but that's the shit he's got to deal with. Kevin Love is not the Kevin Love that we saw in Minnesota. Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance, J.R. Smith, they're all massively underachieving. This is just a bad team that this dude keeps on dragging further and further into the playoffs. And it's insane, man.
And so Rachel Nichols is reporting that the Cavs, LeBron asked if the Cavs can split the game between Tristan Thompson, who played very well tonight, and George Hill came off the bench, and he noted how Kevin Love helped carry the Cavs when he couldn't play at the start of the fourth. This team's chemistry is emerging at the right time. This is one of those things where LeBron's one of those magnetic guys who, when you're winning, he's a lot of fun to be around. I imagine he's a pain in the ass when you're losing, but when you win a Game 7 like this, it can only serve to coalesce a team. And I would say Toronto has their hands more than full.
Yeah, I would agree with that take.
LeBron James scored all those points, had all those stats tonight after suffering cramps. I don't know what to tell you.
Well,
man.
I would say,
year 15.
After is not fair. That was while suffering cramps.
You're right. You know what? And I'm wrong. You're right. That is true. The guy's a cyborg. The guy's a machine. We're all lucky to be watching him. And whether you stand on this LeBron versus MJ thing, and you can take whatever stance you want. Just know that at a certain point, you're just going nostalgia, and you can't support it with numbers because we're watching a guy who's going to pass. He's going to lead the NBA history in assists and be in the top 5 in points. He's a freak of nature. He's terrifyingly good. He's led his team in points, assists, rebounds, and steals for more times than anyone else has in the history of basketball. LeBron James. Happy LeBronukah, everyone. Chad, tell people where to find you, man.
Hey, Chad_Floyd on the Twitter. Writing some for Tar Heel blog. I'd say a good once a week or so, but I'm going to get that podcast back up and rolling. So, especially if you are a UNC sports fan or even an ACC sports fan, as I hear Palmer giggling in the background, definitely tune into that once we get it rolling. And other than that, if you're in the Charlotte area, I will buy you a beer if you will buy a house from me.
There you go, man. What's the account on Instagram for your real estate account?
It is Chad's Pads.
There you go, guys. Follow him. If you're in the Charlotte or North Carolina area, give him a call. He is a great resource. He does know his stuff very, very well. That has been our amazing show, our amazing celebration of the most wonderful time of the year, LeBronukah. May the season bring all the tidings to you and yours in this lovely time of year. That was your show. This is your outro. See you guys next week.